So let me tell you a little bit about Janice G. Raymond. Dr. Janice G. Raymond is an American lesbian radical feminist and professor emerita of women's studies and medical ethics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She is known for her work fighting male violence against women, sexual exploitation, and the medical abuse of women, and for her steadfast commitment to the sex-based rights of women and girls as a sex class. The Women's Declaration International USA honored her with the Lifetime Achievement Award, and beginning in 2024, the keynote address at our annual conventions will be known as the Janice G. Raymond Keynote Address. So this year's Janice G. Raymond Keynote Address will be delivered by Dr. Donna Hughes. The title is Power, Misogyny, and Sexual Exploitation in a New Era. So I am delighted to introduce Donna M. Hughes, a retired professor and endowed chair in women's studies at the University of Rhode Island. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of Dignity, a journal of analysis of exploitation and violence. She has been a radical feminist for 40 years. Will you all join me in welcoming Donna Hughes?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I changed the title a little bit. I'm going to now speak about the normalization of misogyny and sexual exploitation, rather than the title that's on the program. I should mention that I know Janice Raymond quite well. I worked with her most of the years that she was the executive director of the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women. And we co-researched and co-authored the first research paper on the sex trafficking of women in the United States. We got a grant from the National Institute of Justice, Department of Justice, and did that work in the late 90s. Okay. We are living in an era of normalized misogyny. The whole culture is infused with woman-hating from multiple ideologies and industries: political, religious, economic, technological, and most recently, men trying to impersonate us and steal our identities. I am a radical feminist. I am a radical feminist because it was the radical feminist theories that helped me understand my experiences, and they best explain power, sexual violence, and the sexual exploitation in the world around me. A principle of radical feminists, which we've heard several references to it, that has also guided my activism, is that every woman counts. Women and girls make up a sex class, a group with common traits, both biological and social. All women belong to this universal sex class with no woman excluded, especially for acts of harm or exploitation. We should not exclude any woman, because if one woman can be treated that way, any woman can be treated that way, and possibly all women can be treated that way. We see that in places of extreme misogyny as is happening in Afghanistan. Radical feminists do not make exceptions to allow women to be exploited based on what men want from them. I see that in prostitution, where we know the vast majority of women do not want to do prostitution. Oh, but there's supposed to be this small group of women who like it, they feel empowered by it, and therefore we can't make any kind of a global law. Well, who benefits from those small group of women being in prostitution? It's men. So always think, when someone says there's this exception, that therefore we can't say all women, who benefits from the exception? Ending exploitation means ending exploitation, sexual exploitation of all women. In 1987, I heard Andrea Dworkin, a leading radical feminist, speak. She gave a talk called Woman Hating, Right and Left. The idea in that speech gave me insight into why making changes for women is so hard. We live in a patriarchy in which men hold institutional power. However, men don't always agree with one another. They divide themselves into various groups, political groups, religious groups, economic groups. They form political parties. Things are sticking. Right, don't turn it over, that's fine. Okay, they form political parties and institutions. Then they divide what they think of women and their rights according to their philosophies on women. The influential men have state power in the government or influence in religious institutions. With their power, they determine the laws and customs under which women must live. Men determine what control women have over their bodies, the autonomy they have over their reproductive and sexual selves, and their safety. Under these circumstances, women want rights, bodily integrity, and safety. But they must lobby the men with power into giving them those rights. In her speech, Woman Hating Right and Left, Dworkin talked about the misogyny of conservative men and the liberal leftist men, the right and the left. That's what we're up against in struggling for our rights. Women align themselves with groups that will support or help them achieve their goals. They form alliances. For feminists fighting sexual exploitation, we sometimes form alliances with more conservative groups who say they too oppose sexual exploitation. And for feminists fighting for reproductive rights and abortion rights, we sometimes form alliances with more leftist groups who claim to support reproductive rights. You see the problem. Women are constantly trapped between the politics of men and their institutions, and what men decide to allow us to have. However, there is always a price or a trade-off. Men always take something away in exchange for what they will give. In the United States, women are constantly forced to choose between the right and the left. In the 2024 national election, again, women had to choose between the right and the left, in which sets of rights were more important. Reproductive rights being promised by the Democrats, or the sex-based rights being promised by the Republicans. As a result of the election, we got Trump's 3 executive orders on sex-based rights, and we lost reproductive rights. The current wave of woman hating is supported by a lot of political power. The President of the United States, members of Congress, political parties, pastors, and influencers, reinforced by woman-hating tech companies making billions of dollars from pornography and sex trafficking. The rise of the authoritarian political movements around the world is suppressing freedom, democracy, women's rights, and security. Women's rights, especially reproductive rights, are often the first rights women lose when authoritarian movements gain power. Women's well-being and rights depend on democracy. The expansion of women's rights has followed the growth of democracy and liberalism. Authoritarians who want to gain power and weaken democracy use misogyny to carry their message of anger and hate to argue for restrictions of rights. They target women to gain popular power. Given this background, I want to discuss the normalization of sexual exploitation in the last few decades. With the widespread growth of pornography and sexual exploitation through media and technology, the treatment of women has become more violent. 17 years ago, in 2008, there was a documentary entitled The Price of Pleasure: Pornography, Sexuality, and Relationships. A producer of pornography was asked about the future of pornography, and this was in 2008. He explained that, I'm going to give a nasty quote, he explained that everything that could be done to a woman had already been done. He asked, how many dicks can you stick on a woman at one time? The limit on women had been reached, so he concluded that the only thing left was violence. Violence was the future of pornography, and that is what has happened. Pornography is now just pure sexual violence. We have strangulation pornography. I saw a recent report that found that the majority of teens have seen strangulation pornography before they reach the age of 18. And as we know, pornography is sex education for the younger generation. As a result, men learn from watching pornography that it is normal to choke women during sex or even during kissing. And they assume that women want it and enjoy it. And women are also being taught that choking is normal, and they expect and tolerate violence as part of sex. And I just want to make a little plug here for tomorrow. There's a group of us led by Catherine Kinney, who have been analyzing writings that have been submitted to a survey to WDI USA. So if you want to hear more about what we found about what women have to say about pornography, please come tomorrow. Okay, I want to talk about how to discuss the normalization of sexual exploitation by focusing on men at the top, 2 presidents of the United States. Both of them sexually exploited and abused women, denied it, and lied. That has contributed to the normalization of sexual exploitation. Former President Bill Clinton perpetrated numerous cases of sexual abuse, including sexual groping, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. There are accusations from when he was governor of Arkansas and when he was campaigning. His most well-known sexual exploitation victim was a young woman intern while he was President of the United States in 1997. The events took place in the most prestigious location in our country, the Oval Office of the White House. Although the intern claimed at the time that the sexual activity was consensual, most feminists characterized Clinton's behavior as predatory because of the abnormal power imbalance between the President of the U.S. and a 20-year-old intern. There are at least 2 significant ways his behavior normalized sexual exploitation. The first was that the American people heard that the President of the United States made a bold-faced lie about his sexual activity. Clinton emphatically stated, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." Later, DNA analysis of a spot on the intern's dress revealed that it was a lie. Clinton, the President of the United States, had denied and lied until he got caught. When caught in his lies, he claimed that sexual relations didn't include receiving oral sex. This engaged the country in a discussion about what acts are included in sex, whether oral sex is sex, and whether it is part of sexual relations. The effect was to shift how people view oral sex. They detached that activity from what we call sex. Going forward, sexual relations excluded getting a blowjob. Men could get blowjobs, and it didn't mean anything. Women could be asked to give a man a blowjob because it wasn't having sex. It lowered our tolerance for the predatory sexual behavior and redefined what sex was. Men could expect blowjobs from women without it having any serious meaning, a further normalization of sexual exploitation. Clinton was impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice, but he remained in office because the Democratic men in the Senate acquitted him. He did not resign in disgrace, his wife did not leave him or divorce him, and he has remained a popular Democratic Party personality. The next president I want to talk about is Donald Trump. In 2016, the first time Donald Trump ran for president, a recording emerged of him talking about women in the most misogynist, predatory ways. He bragged about sexually assaulted women. He made the now famous grab 'em by the pussy confession. Trump described his aggression and sexual assault this way: "I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you get away with it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy." Many men dismissed Trump's bragging about his sexual exploitation and assaults as locker room talk, something all men do. Total normalization. They never considered that he was confessing to criminal activity. Trump did not apologize. He did not end his campaign for president. He had no shame. He just moved forward as if nothing had happened. He set a new standard. from which we are still living with. Just keep going. No one will stop you or hold you accountable. Just keep going. To date, at least 28 women have accused Trump of sexual misconduct, such as rape, kissing and groping without consent, looking under women's skirts, and walking in on naked teenage pageant contestants, numerous accusations, and one conviction. Trump, using his power as the president, has appointed numerous men with histories of sexual assault or exploitation accusations, including the highest level positions in the country, a Supreme Court justice, an attorney general, and cabinet positions. Trump had the audacity to nominate a man to the highest law enforcement position in the U.S., the Attorney General of the United States, who was under investigation for sex trafficking, a 17-year-old girl. Nothing screams louder about Trump's view of women and sexual exploitation. Because of the public outrage, Matt Gaetz's nomination was withdrawn for Attorney General, but there was no prosecution of his sex trafficking. Now we are in the midst of what has been called the most poisonous cover-up in our country's history. The White House, Congress, the Department of Justice, and the entire Republican Party are engaged in suppressing the Jeffrey Epstein files. The official record of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other co-conspirators trafficking and sexual exploitation of hundreds of teenage girls over the years. Apparently, the President of the United States is implicated along with a number of other high-ranking, influential men in the rape and exploitation of girls. The entire U.S. government has been corrupted to protect wealthy, high-ranking men's sexual abuse and exploitation of girls and young women. Following the 2024 election of Donald Trump, a psychologist friend of mine described the effect that electing a known sexual predator was having on the victims and perpetrators that she treats. She treats not only the victims of sexual trauma, she also treats perpetrators. She described the effect of Trump's election win had on her patients. In her clinic, concerning the victims, she said, quote, "The phone started ringing with a frequency I have never experienced in my 40 years as a psychologist. The sexual trauma survivors were devastated. Their pain vibrated even through the phone line. I heard the thoughts generated by the election. The victims cried, how could the voters vote for a convicted rapist who had sex with a porn star? And laughed as he described grabbing women by their genitals. I thought the one person who raped me was my perpetrator, but now all the voters who voted for a rapist are my perpetrators." The therapist, my friend, explained, rape is the most potent producer of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's more devastating than almost anything else. The victim's sense of betrayal was enormous. To be betrayed by millions of, one woman said, to be betrayed by millions of people in one day is nearly unbearable. My therapist friend also treats male perpetrators and sex addicts. And this is what one of them said. Abuse perpetrators now believe they no longer need treatment for the toxic sexual behaviors they engage in. One patient who prostituted and raped women told me, I guess I don't need to work on these issues anymore. None of this can be bad if the president has done it. We know that some women in this room voted for Kamala Harris, and some voted for Donald Trump. Hera Dansky wrote a paper about women's choices in the last election. It was based on comments and interviews from people in this organization. Women voted for Trump because they wanted and got executive orders on sex-based rights. Women committed to sexual reproductive rights and racial equality voted for Harris and lost. Women were set against each other over women's rights. Remember, woman-hating, right and left. They make you choose and then set women against each other. Okay, the goal of this conference is to grow the women's liberation movement. We are here to learn how to be powerful, to instill power in each other, and to acknowledge and celebrate power in each other. Most of us, if not all of us, are survivors. We need to remember that and honor our different experiences. WDI USA is purposefully nonpartisan. We pledge to be tolerant of different views, provided that every member has signed the Women's Declaration International Statement. I tried to show why I think being nonpartisan is important. We must work to make sure that the organization does not split into being an ally of either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or religious factions. After President Clinton embarrassed us, the liberal women's groups were paralyzed. This is what happens. The women's groups were paralyzed. They were so closely aligned with the Democratic Party, they could not criticize Clinton. And when they did, it was tepid. And consider how paralyzed the Republican women are now about Trump's abuse and exploitation of women and girls. They're trapped too. So how do we learn to be powerful and grow the women's liberation movement? First of all, don't let people put you in a box with labels. Resist. Don't let people set us against each other. Resist. Don't let people tell you that you shouldn't speak to those women over there. Resist. I have been labeled and shunned in academia and in parts of the feminist movement, and I have and will continue to resist. We must remain dedicated to women's rights and safety. We must be dedicated to the truth. We must have the courage to speak the truth. We must believe in the power of truth. And I'll close with a quote by radical feminist Andrea Dworkin. And she said, "When something hurts women, feminists are against it." Thank you. Oh, questions and answers. Actually, I had to cut this back, so I was sure I wasn't going to have time. Okay, questions and answers. Oh, one thing I will say is that on one of the calls, I asked what did people want me to talk about, and someone said, "Oh, we'll talk about Dignity, my journal." I founded and I'm the editor-in-chief of a journal called Dignity, a journal of analysis of exploitation and violence. And I just want to tell you, if you're at all interested, come up and see me. You can ask questions. I really encourage people to submit essays, personal experience essays, as well as more theoretical things, and research reports. Questions and answers? Or questions? No, you asked the question.
Do you want to stand up in my neck?
Oh. Good afternoon, Donna. Thank you so much for that. Is this thing on? Cool. I just gotta hold it up to my mouth. Anyway, tall girls here. Let's see. Here's my question. And like you set it up so perfectly with what you talked about from multiple different angles. And like, let me just soapbox for 20 seconds, if you'll allow me. The political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are patriarchal, both of them. It's the blue team and the red team, it's the boys fighting against each other. I believe that women need to work within these parties, but somehow form a women's coalition, like to break through the gridlock in Congress. And we could be so powerful doing that because we're almost split right down the middle, red team, blue team, right? But if somehow there was a way to convince the women elected officials to work through the aisle and come up with a women's coalition from both sides, that would push through any legislation we wanted, right? Because it's red team versus blue team, and then the women's coalition is the one that's the tiebreaker, and we could leverage that to really advance all of these principles that are universal for women on both sides of the party, against sexual assault, protecting our children, so many things that we could push through on you get our vote, this whole coalition's vote, if you give this one thing for women, and that's how we will break through the gridlock and represent women, and we could use our democracy to do it and working within the party. And I guess my question is, women, how do we make that happen?
I think that's a good point. And the speaker, last speaker, Ms. Hoffman, said something about have a compass. have a compass, and wherever it points toward helping women, that's where you go. And if your issue happens to be reproductive rights, well, you're probably going to have to work more with the Democrats. But that doesn't mean you quit talking to the Republican women. They're your allies too. And I think we have to keep that in mind, how we're going to try to hold together to focus on women's issues.
We could lobby women in Congress.
Sure.
And if I can just add one tiny detail, like, there's definitely issues that are definitely left and definitely right, but there's also so many issues that are universal that women agree with, right? And if we started with those issues,
That's right.
and unified everyone on those issues, then we can move, and you know, not talk so much about the stuff that's partisan
That's
and
right.
patriarchal. That's it. Thank you so much.
What's your idea?
I have a question. I mean, just on that last point, part of the problem here is that if WDI USA, or both for that matter, wants to work with Democrats on abortion, I think both groups would do that. The problem is none of the Democrats will talk to us about anything, including our support for abortion rights. Okay, so there's a lot of talk about these are all the ways in which the Democrats are patriarchal, and these are all the ways in which the Republicans are patriarchal. I totally get it. I hear a lot, and we all hear a lot, sort of in the anti-gender identity zeitgeist, that the words left and right have started to become meaningless.
I have to yes.
Well, so there's a lot of support for that sentiment in this room right now. It doesn't ring true for me. Because when I think about this, I continue to think that there is a right, which is, in my view, politically regressive, very sexist, well, it's just politically regressive, right? And then, in my view, there's a set of political values that I would call the left, in terms of the set of values, not in terms of what passes for the left in America today, which is crap, essentially, right? Like, when Republicans blame the left for all of this stuff that we're here fighting, I know what they mean, but to me, none of that is an authentic left. So I would love to hear your thoughts on, like, do the words left and right even mean anything?
I think you're absolutely right that they have almost lost all meaning. And, or you have to be sort of relatively sophisticated in political theory to even understand what they really mean. They're really just sort of things you point fingers at, rather than having a whole lot of meaning, especially as the parties are changing. And if you've been online very much in the last couple of weeks, following the murder of Charlie Kirk, there have been feminists battling it out of whether the perpetrator, he's a far right, he's far, no, he's you know, dating this trans man, they're leftists, and they're all fighting about whether they're right or left. And I thought, you know, go talk to those guys. They're probably so into pornography and furries and who knows what. They probably don't even know what right or left is, other than maybe just a word that's being used. I don't know, I'm not a timekeeper.
Yes, you're good.
10 minutes. So this actually starting the conversation back to pornography. So I think it is feasible for to implement an age limit on pornography so that every state requires an ID and make sure that you're 18. I think that's definitely possible. It'll be very difficult because we've seen with states that have done that, Pornhub just basically pulls out and basically is punishing the state for implementing an age law, because porn companies know that they need to get kids income. Same reason why cigarette companies fought against regulations of selling to kids, right? They want to get them hooked young. So I think that is feasible, although very difficult. Do you think that we could ever do a full ban on pornography in the US, which I know will be very difficult, but we do have prostitution ban, so maybe we could steer it or basically frame it in the way that we're still selling women's bodies online? I don't know, so what are your thoughts on it? Do you think pornography could be fully banned?
Probably not. I think that it's going to take a lot of different things, really more cultural change, and that's huge, I know. I do know that there are a lot of groups that are starting to successfully implement age-limited limits, and there are groups that are suing some of the big groups like Pornhub and what are the nasty brothers? Hate Brothers. And are really making some progress there. But I sort of worry, okay, maybe we can get rid of them, but what's going to replace them? And I think it's a huge problem, but I don't think just banning things is a likely successful strategy at this point.
What would you say would be the successful strategy if you have one in mind? Just because I know like pornography is so difficult. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I do support the groups that are suing them, I mean, they're essentially being able to, they're dismantling Pornhub and some of the big platforms. And if age limitations are helpful, I mean, it's sort of an incremental change. Exactly what point, if you reach some sort of tipping point, I wish I could say.
Thank you.
Is this, yeah. So also on the topic of pornography and the strangulation that you mentioned in your presentation, I did some math earlier. Around 15% of women have been non-consensually choked during sex due to this issue. Like, I guess my question is, how do we get women involved? How do we get women to see the issue, like the broad reaching implications of pornography in our society and our culture?
It's a good, I mean, we grow this organization, we grow the movement, and I haven't heard too many surveys, but I haven't heard any women say, I like to be choked. Probably some out there believe that, of course, there are, but that was one of the things that, well, I'm not going to tell you what some of our conclusions are from our research. Come tomorrow, and we'll talk more about it.
If I can speak from back here, I think you guys can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that way is fine. To kind of tie those two ideas together of like how do we break through, but also the meaninglessness of parties, I think maybe what people are getting at when they say that parties don't mean anything is that they aren't actually about any sensible political thought at all. They are purely football teams and ciphers for whatever the other team hates.
For the billionaires, yeah.
Yeah.
That needs something in the men involved.
Yeah, but for the everyday people, that's what it is. It's a way of consolidating feeling that doesn't really have any real analysis behind it. So maybe, I'm very wary of the idea that we can actually defeat this from within. So what about women building a culture of actually having these philosophical conversations very intentionally and very intentionally eschewing all of these political labels that don't mean anything anymore?
Sure. Yeah, I agree totally. Write some papers, I'll publish them.
Yeah.
Like your book. Start, get people rethinking some of these things that are very, very important, and I sure don't have any answer, but I'm willing to work on it.
I just wanted to say one thing. What do you think about just opting out and not voting, and having enough people do that to where that's a political tool?
I strongly disagree with that. I think we have a vote, I think we have to use it, and I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, they're both so, and I've heard this for decades. My feminist friends say, oh, they're both so awful, I just voted for Susan B. Anthony. No, your vote is too important. No matter what you do, no matter who you vote for, think it through carefully and then do it. But we must vote.
As we just covered, we're saying like each party has its problems and we're feeling helpless. And this is over and over and over. So like, if we keep participating in a system where we ultimately have no power, how else can we like show them that, hey, we're gonna step outside your unit of power and not participate, right? Like how else can we get our message out without a threat? Because that's what they want, our
I think we
vote.
have to keep talking to one another, and not only just to people that we agree with, but if you're a member of the Republican Party, go to some Democratic Party meetings and talk to the women. Start cross-pollinating, start talking. One of the first people that spoke said, form some sort of a women's coalition that's bipartisan.
So I came in late, I apologize if this has already been talked about. I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in Indiana, and I think one thing that women can do, especially if they're a parent, is know part of the age of consent issue is that even in the state of Indiana, a very red state, children can seek mental health care as young as 14 without a parent's permission. So make sure you know what your children are involved in, and if you're in the public school or even private school system, make sure you know what you're signing when you enroll your child. You need to opt them out of counseling in the school. It's in the registration paperwork. So there's a lot you can do as a woman, just in your own home, and teach your friends and family about those things.
So, on the politics, I've been in and out on a very low level as a political volunteer for a great portion of my life, pushing issues for human rights, women's rights, prisoners' rights. I think what we need, and I don't know what organization is going to do it, but I came up through the 60s and 70s, and my mom couldn't get a credit card when I was a little kid. She couldn't get a credit card in her own name. She had to get my dad's name on it, and his permission and his signature. So she took me, and we went to Sears and Roebuck, and she got herself a credit card. How did we get from there to where probably everyone in this room has a piece of plastic in their purse, if not more than one? We had power. Women organized. Women put pressure on politicians. And you're not going to get my vote, buddy, unless you pass this, unless you push the pass. We have to not be political in the sense of, oh, we're the ladies auxiliary to the Democratic Party. No. We need to be political in the sense of, you're going to listen to what women say, or we're taking you down. When I was a young mother, women in Illinois became absolutely outraged because our male senator treated Anita Hill like a piece of garbage when she tried to come in and testify about what Clarence Thomas did. And our senator in Illinois was the one who was leading basically the charge against her. Democrat, and Illinois Democrats have a long and sordid history with misogyny, but we rose up. We women, we rose up. We elected a black woman, the first black woman to the United States Senate, Carol Moseley Braun. But I took personal days from work, and a lot of women did. And I was in there stuffing envelopes and doing anything, making phone calls. But a whole bunch of angry women have a lot of power. We have a lot of power. And we need to touch base with that. And not just talk amongst our neighbors or whatever. We got to organize, and we got to make the parties vote.
And I think I agree.
Fear us.
I agree, and I think one of the first things we need to do is make sure that we don't let people split us into right and left or whatever label they want to put on us. We have to be able to stick together.